Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone attending the Planning Committee meeting today, especially those in the public gallery and anyone watching the meeting via the webcast. To the members of the public in the gallery, I would like to remind you that this planning meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so there is no need for any other filming of the meeting to take place. This meeting is available to view online now and in the future. Committee members, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there is an emergency alarm, please follow the green signs and go to the ground floor of the Civic car park. Thank you. I'll now ask the officers to introduce themselves. So if we can start with you, Polly. Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Polly Ellis, I'm the solicitor for the council.
I'm Rachel Beale, Senior Business Support Officer.
Hello, Richard Lewis, Head of Planning and Development.
Paul Wheeldon, Group Leader, Highway Development Control.
Claire Hall, Senior Planner.
Robin Murray, Principal Planning Officer, Policy Officer.
Scott Jenkins, Planning Officer. Norman Jones, Team Leader, Applications.
Thank you. And I'd like to welcome Rachel Jowett, who is our new Chief Officer Neighbourhoods, Neighbourhoods Planning and Public Protection. You're very welcome, Rachel. Thank you. Right. I go to the agenda now, item 1. Attendance and apologies. If you would all sign the attendance register as usual. Any apologies, Rachel?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Hugh Bevan.
Thank you, Rachel. Are there any other apologies? No? Thank you. We go to item 2, declarations of interest. Polly? Thank you.
Firstly, I'd remind members that you need to complete the declaration of interest form in the attendance register folder if you're declaring an interest in any application. The following interests have been declared. Councillor Stuart Ashley has declared a personal non-prejudicial interest in agenda items 5 and agenda item 6 as a member of Cwmbran Community Council who have been consulted on the application. Councillor Faye Jones has declared a personal non-prejudicial interest in agenda item 5 and agenda item 6 as she is also a member of Cwmbran Community Council who have been consulted on the application. And Chair to note that Councillor Alan Slade will wish to make a declaration prior to agenda item 5.
Thank you. Right, we go to item 3, which is minutes of the planning meeting held on the 24th of October, and they're on pages 3 to 6. We'll do them for accuracy, and if anyone wants to comment or question me as I go along, we'll do it together. Page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. Would someone move them? Thank you. As a seconder. Right, do we all agree? Can we have a show of hands? Thank you. They moved. Item 4 on the agenda, which is Annual Performance Report 2016-17. I think Richard Lewis is going to introduce it briefly for us. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, this is a report that we need to prepare every year for Welsh Government. It's a requirement. We've submitted to the Welsh Government this year. It's also required to be published on the website. And following all the councils submitting their annual performance reports, the Welsh Government will prepare a comprehensive one to match us all, which is due in the new year. If I could just refer you to page 27. Welsh Government has prepared an annual performance framework quite a number of years ago now, and this is where each authority is assessed against certain criteria. The measure is shown in the left-hand column that's coloured white, and then the good, fair and improved columns is basically Welsh Government's targets, which planning authorities need to meet. You can see then that the following three columns, it's got the Welsh average, and then Torfaen's results for 15-16, and then the previous financial years to 16-17. And following that is an explanation of all those performance figures. And that's all I really want to say on that, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members on this item? No? We all agree to note the information? Thanks. Can we have a show of hands? Thank you. Thank you. Item 5 is planning application 17P 0579, and it's the proposal is construction of 14 dwellings, parking, open space and associated works, and the site address is land off Brangwyn Avenue, Llantarnam, Cwmbran. Right. Councillor Slade.
I'm going to excuse myself from the meeting while consideration of this matter takes place. I do not intend to speak in my capacity as a member of this planning committee, and neither will I participate in the vote. The reason for this is because I've already made my mind up about this application, but I do, however, intend to speak in my capacity as a local ward member.
That's fine, Councillor Slade. If you'd like to leave now, and you can return when you wish to speak. Thank you. Right. This application, there was a site inspection on the 12th of September. And I think Claire Hall, you're going to do a presentation? Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Just one update to the report. You'll see on page 60 that Fields and Trust's comments on the amended public open space assessment hadn't been received at the time the report was written. I did receive them late last night. They are remaining concerned about the public open space assessment. They're querying the validity of using the whole Llantarnam ward as a basis of the assessment. They also doubt the classification of the pleasure gardens, which they think should be in a separate categorisation. However, they do say, having said the above, putting aside the methodology and outcome of any public open space assessment, where there are differences of opinion, consideration should be given to the importance of a particular space to a community, and it would appear that based on the response to this application, that the space at Brangwyn Avenue is clearly important, and therefore Fields and Trust would be concerned if this development was permitted. So it is not too much different to what's in the report, actually. They are concerned about the methodology and the assessment basis, and they are concerned about the loss of the open space. This is the this is the application site. This is the community centre. This is an existing smaller parcel of green space with some parking around here, and this is the length of the application site, which is currently all green space. Sorry, it's a bit dark. That's a view from Brangwyn Avenue looking north towards the community centre, and this is a view from the north looking south towards Brangwyn Avenue. This is the aforementioned parking area in the southwest corner, and this is the footpath that runs, this is the community centre, this is the footpath that runs the entire length of the site, which is just here. This is the proposed layout, so they're proposing construction of a new access road through the site, parking and turning, and to extend the car parking area in the southwest corner with new build residential units across here. This is the community centre, and along the length here, back to back with existing properties adjacent to the site. There's a lot of information on there, but these are sectional elevations just to show the typical sort of design and layout of the buildings proposed. And similarly, an artist impression of those elevation drawings. This is the original assessment, site assessment map provided by the applicants, which included lots more parcels of land. In the revised assessment, they sort of reached agreement with your officers over the validity of some of those smaller pockets. So this was their revised map, if you like. And the bigger areas that you can refer to there are obviously the boating lake and the pleasure gardens, which are referred to in the report. That's it.
Thank you, Claire. We've got speakers for this item. So if the first speaker would like to come down, Miss Linda Joseph, an objector. She come up on screen. Hello. Please sit down and turn the mic on, and when you're ready to speak, Polly will time you. You have 5 minutes, okay? Thank you.
My name is Linda Joseph, and I want to state how strongly I and other local residents object to this planning application. By equal measure, I want to support the officer's report and its recommendation to refuse. It's clear that in planning terms alone, this application goes against a significant number of policy areas at both local and strategic levels. The considerable pressure for development in the local area is quite understandable. It's a nice place to live and commuting is easy due to the closeness of the M4. However, there has been far too much development in the area. This has resulted in a huge loss of green space in the last 20 to 30 years. Wet meadows, farmland and green space have all disappeared under industrial and housing development. And the presumption in favour of development on brownfield sites has almost been completely ignored. The site in question is considered to be of low ecological value. I would dispute that assessment, since the assessments are based on the absence of key species. Everywhere has some ecological value, and the cumulative value of such sites is all the more important in face of increased development. The site is a feeding and resting ground for birds. The plant species feed bees and other insects. It's a green corridor for wildlife that use the nearby hedges and gardens. And there's the potential for some habitat creation on the site, which is important given the loss of other green space in the area. The school fields at the former primary and secondary schools are currently being built on, causing disturbance and destroying habitats and wildlife corridors. The last remaining ancient oak trees that gave Oakfield its name are being disturbed and surrounded by the housing development at the adjacent former primary school site. These trees are particularly important. They are habitats for a wide variety of insect life that is vital for ecological balance and supporting other species. Only time will tell if they and their dependent species can survive this upheaval. By then it will be too late. The current site shown on the map slopes down from the school field to Dowlice Brook and its associated floodplain. The fields and local trees act as sponges to slow water runoff to the brook. In periods of heavy rain, we have experienced flooding in recent years, and the runoff of water will be increased and quickened by covering this site and the adjacent school site in tarmac and housing. Car movements will inevitably increase, leading to more noise, congestion and pollution. The area already suffers overcrowding on the local streets, with people parking on and damaging grass verges, parking under trees and on pavements. This project will only exacerbate the problems. In conclusion, while I recognise the need for affordable housing, it should not be at the expense of more open green space. While change is inevitable, our village of Llantarnam and Oakfield has been changed beyond recognition over the decades, and its rural character has been ruined. Further development has to stop. Apart from the obvious policy issues that this application fails to address, Bronavon's open space assessment is not a true reflection of the current position in the area. As already mentioned, it contained inaccurate and inadequate site descriptions, inclusion of grass verges and sites with no public access, and more importantly, sites that are just not local enough to be used safely by local children. Bronavon claims that at the consultation exercise that this development will improve the area are just ridiculous. It'll take away the last community open space of a usable size forever. And the site is so much more than just an open space. It's about hearing local children screaming with laughter as they play together, learning to organise, working in teams, and just having fun in safety and freedom. I grew up playing on that field, and like many local people, it is a site full of memories, a site that will continue to create memories for future generations if you refuse this application. In its present condition, I accept it isn't pretty, but I'm working to get it registered as a village green and hope to encourage the landowner and the local community to improve it. This land was given to us for community recreational use. It's ours and should remain ours to use and enjoy. Please give your support to the recommendation for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Joseph. If you go back to your seat now. Thank you. And the next objector is Mr Neil Beattie. If you'd like to come down, Mr Beattie. Whenever you're ready, Mr Beattie, just put the microphone on and Polly will time you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Neil Beattie. I want to oppose this proposal by Bronavon in the strongest terms. I live next to the site concerned and have been active in the campaign against the planning application. I wholeheartedly support the Village Green project. This site is invaluable for the local community's well-being and is regularly used for recreation and free play by children and has been so since 1958. I believe the Bronavon proposal should be refused as recommended by Torfaen officers and others, for the following reasons. The suggestion that this planning application will provide open space is simply nonsense. The field is already an open space. This scheme reduces it dramatically, rendering it useless. The proposed play area on the new open space is too small. It will be alongside the proposed new road and right next to the footpath and people's gardens. This will take away children's freedom to play unhindered completely and will only cater for younger children, whereas currently the space is used by many age groups. The open aspect of the area is why people like living there. It provides a good quality of life, exactly why the estates were built with open green spaces. Housing on this site would have an adverse effect on the visual amenity of the area as a whole. People's health and well-being are increasingly being harmed by the lack of open spaces. There is the likely effect of noise and activities in the community centre on the adjacent new residencies. It will only be a matter of time before they complain, and this could close the centre. The housing design does not fit existing styles in the area and will look completely out of place. The proposed road up the centre of the playing field will become a car park. The proposed car parking spaces will only accommodate cars from the new housing if they only have one car per household, which is highly unlikely. The existing community will benefit to the tune of one extra car parking space. The extra traffic and congestion along Brangwen Avenue and Green Willows Place Court will make existing traffic problems even worse, which potentially threatens the circular bus route, which many people rely on. Increased traffic movements and parking congestion will result in the potential life-threatening delays for emergency services. The area already suffers from traffic noise from local transport and Cumbrae Drive, and the proposed development will add to this. Any right to quiet life and freedom from interference will be severely compromised. The houses and block of flats are inappropriate for this small space and will overshadow nearby properties, resulting in a loss of privacy. To recap, our children's freedom to play will be absolutely stopped by this proposal. The Court Farm and Oakfield Green is the only place you can still hear children playing and having fun. It's vital for their health and well-being. There are few enough decent local facilities for the existing local community, and yet the house building carries on unabated. All our local facilities have disappeared over the years, and our community is becoming more fragmented because of it. Local people are highly unlikely to benefit from the new social housing because of the method of allocation from Bronavon. The Council's commitment to sustainability, the rights of children, human rights legislation and a whole raft of other charters and codes will be severely undermined if this proposal is allowed. The proposal does not address the needs of the local people or the local community. To conclude, local residents do not want this development. The Open Space Society, Fields in Trust, the Community Council, our MP, the council leader and our local councillors, Play Wales and Torvine's own Play Service have all publicly backed the local opposition to this plan. The officer's report sets out even more evidence that this plan is not feasible or appropriate and should be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Beattie. The next speaker is Councillor Mike Villas from Cumbrae Community Council. If you just press the microphone, Councillor Villas, and start when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, councillors. I wish to object in the strongest possible terms to the proposed application to build housing on this greenfield. As a Lantana Ward Community Councillor, I agree with my constituents that this is a housing development too far for Lantana. I would refer you to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015, where I note that public bodies need to make sure that when making their decisions, they take into account the impact they could have on people living their lives in Wales in the future. The Act expects public bodies to take action to try and stop problems getting worse, or even stop them happening in the first place. This point certainly needs to be considered by you, as this planning application will only cause problems to existing residents, as I will talk about later. The Torvine Wellbeing Statement 2017-18 has a foreword from both the leader of Torvine Council, Anthony Hunt, and the Chief Executive, Alison Ward. Section 1.3 of this document states, "We will manage and improve our public open spaces for people and wildlife, with the expected impact of managed green spaces leading to resilient environments, enhanced biodiversity and support for community well-being." Now, all children have the right to play, as enshrined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is recognised both by the UK government and the Welsh government. Article 31 of the Convention states, "Every child has the right to rest and leisure, to engage in play and recreational activities appropriate to the age of the child, and to participate freely in cultural life and the arts." In a publication from the Welsh Assembly called Wales, a Play-Friendly Country, it states that the local authority should recognise that all open spaces, including those which, whilst not owned by them, are accessible to the public within their area, are potentially important areas where children can play. Besides young children and others using this field, informally, Torfaen Play Services After School Club regularly use this field for outside leisure purposes. This point is backed up by your landscape officer, who objects to the application on the basis of loss of informal recreational space of which this field is a very good example. So I hope the 2015 Wellbeing Act, the Torfaen Wellbeing Statement and the rights of children to play are taken into account when you consider this application. This Oakfield community wishes to retain their green space and need your support for their well-being. I'd now like to concentrate on the effect that construction traffic will have on estate roads, especially Brangburn Avenue, as this will have a direct effect on the well-being of existing residents. This road is pretty narrow, but somehow managed to be used as a bus route through Oakfield. However, all the buses, regardless of route, have to enter Brangburn Avenue from Llantarnam Road and travel through Oakfield in the same direction in order to prevent them meeting in the middle of the estate. These bus route roads have to be tarmacked regularly as the heavy buses cause damage to the state roads that weren't designed to take public transport. If this planning application is approved, then we would have heavy construction traffic travelling in both directions along Brangburn Avenue, causing far worse problems to the road, as well as creating further congestion for residents, buses, etc. Besides heavy construction traffic, you must also consider there will be a number of contractors, 10, 15, 20, who will have to drive to the site and find somewhere to park all the working day. Where will they park? If they park on Brangburn Avenue, the nearest road to the site, then they are simply increasing the problem for large vehicles trying to get through these very narrow roads. If not on Brangburn Avenue, then they will be accessing other residents' car parking spaces, causing more distress for residents. Councillors, thank you for listening to me. I hope when you hear this plea and that of fellow concerned residents and councillors, that you will accept the recommendation of your planning officer and reject this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Villas. The next speaker is Councillor Alan Slade. I don't know where he is, or Polly will get him. Who's coming in? Right. Thank you, Councillor Slade. When you're ready, just press your microphone. You ready? Yeah.
Madam Chair, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. As a new member, it occurs to me that the planning process is quite an adversarial one, with clear winners and losers. If the officer's recommendation is accepted in this case, and I hope it certainly will be, the winners then would be the local community who fought to get this application rejected. However, I believe there's another winner here, and that would be the planning process itself. Officers and members of this committee are often criticised by the public when the process does not go their way, but they fail to recognise that the planning process is a fairly prescriptive one, meaning that we can't simply judge an application based upon the motion alone. We can only judge an application based upon how it stands against planning law and council policy. Simply put, if the only objection is that I don't want this development in my backyard, then the development's going to get the go-ahead. In this instance, however, the local community can take a lot of credit for coming together and presenting a strong argument against the development. They have pointed out the lack of open space, the lack of playing facilities, and the strong concerns they have about the overdevelopment in the area. Now, the development under consideration is for 14 much-needed social housing units, and the developer would have you believe that the undisputed need for social housing overrides any wider council policies and community concerns. Nothing could be further from the truth. If allowed to proceed, this development would be a blight upon the local community and rob us of our last remaining decent green space. Thankfully, the planning process recognises that the need for social housing cannot in itself be an overriding factor and allow us to ignore council policies. Amongst these policies, the council has recognised the need to protect open space, the need to plan for climate change, and the need to protect the health and well-being of current and future generations of residents. This development fails to help us meet those needs, and if allowed to proceed, would harm the community in which it rests. So it simply can't be allowed to proceed. I'm not going to go through the issues in any further detail, as I am sure members have read the officers' report for themselves. I would, however, like to thank officers for their customary diligence in recognising that this development is not in the best interest of either the local or wider community. I now call upon members to endorse the officers' recommendation and reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. We've got Councillor David Thomas next, if you'd like to come down. Councillor Thomas, if you'd like to start whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Afternoon, members. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak here today, so I'll make this short and sweet. As many of you will be aware, I am a firm believer that Llantarnam's ward has been overdeveloped these past few years, and I have seen firsthand how vastly the ward has changed from its beautiful green fields to the ever-growing housing estates. I wholeheartedly welcome officers' recommendations to refuse planning for Bronavon's proposal to develop the green at Brangwyn Avenue, and I do hope my fellow members will agree in this recommendation too. As an elected member, I see the need for affordable housing and social housing to be built, but I believe that Llantarnam ward has done its fair share in helping with this ever-growing problem. Lastly, I would like to thank officers in their hard work and long reports and the decisions you have to make in your roles of duty. I would just like to say to the people that I serve as an elected councillor of Llantarnam, thank you for your ever-growing trust in us as councillors and your passion and support in where we live. It is a real honour to be able to represent you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. If you'd like to go back to your seat. Now we have the applicant, Rob Pano, if you'd like to come down now. Thank you, Mr. Pano. The microphone's already on, so you can start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Robert Pano. I'm the Senior Development for Bronavon Community Housing. Firstly, I want to make a number of technical points in support of this application. Then I want to talk about this application from more of a personal perspective. Firstly, in the adopted local development plan, the site lies wholly within the established settlement limits and is not designated as a protected important urban open space. Secondly, the policy that governs open space, policy CF5, is a permissive criteria which specifically allows for development on areas of open space within settlements, where the amount of open space remaining in the neighbourhood would still be adequate to serve local needs. There is a stark difference between the Council and our public open space assessment. With regards to criteria A of the policy, which relates to the quantum of informal recreational open space within the Llantarnam ward, and this currently stands as the only technical reason for refusal. The policy requirement for informal recreational space in the Llantarnam ward is 3.04 hectares. The total informal recreational open space identified in our public open space assessment is 6.97 hectares, and by the council is 2.55. The council's measurements, which were seen by us for the first time in the committee report last week and only received in illustrative form yesterday, exclude a number of sections of the pleasure gardens and the boating lake, without explanation as to why they are not considered as informal recreational open space. We firmly believe that these areas qualify as informal recreational open space, and if these areas were included in the council's calculation, then there would be a surplus of informal open recreational space within the ward, and therefore we would comply with criteria A of policy CF5. In addition, Llantarnam Pleasure Gardens provides 2.86 hectares of public open space within 480 metres walking distance of Brangwyn Avenue as recommended by Fields and Trust. Other smaller areas of open space at Green Willows and Tuon Court Farm Road are also within the Fields and Trust 480 metre recommended walking distance. These sites together result in more than the 3.04 hectares requirement for the ward. This is not including any land within the boating lake, which is a very high quality area of open space in Llantarnam ward. All of the above needs to be considered in the context of the council's housing land supply, which stands at 3.6 years in accordance with the Welsh Government's only recognised methodology for calculating housing land supply, stating that when housing supply is below 5 years, the need to increase it should be given considerable weight. Further, the fact that the scheme provides 100% affordable housing, making a valuable contribution to both the council's own annual affordable housing requirement and the Welsh Government's aspiration of delivering 20,000 affordable homes over the next Parliament, is a strong material consideration. We would also like to raise the case officer's recommendation for refusal includes biodiversity connectivity, despite Natural Resource Wales and the council's own ecologist having no objection to the proposed development on these grounds. Lastly, the committee report fails to represent the parking benefits for the scheme, which includes formalising 10 existing car park spaces for the resident of Plas Court and providing 6 additional car park spaces for existing residents, which will ease the need to park along Brangwyn Avenue and Plas Court. So that's where we're coming from a technical perspective. I'm actually not, I'm saying not necessarily because it's my job as the Senior Development Manager for Brunavon. I have consultants that I can pay to come here. I think fundamentally, I'm not a developer. I don't work for Barratt Homes. I'm not in this for profit. I'm not in this for self-gain. I'm here because I care about housing, and I care about housing in Wales. It was interesting to hear Councillor Slade that the planning system has won today, because I fundamentally think it has lost. Because my passion recently was recognised by the Welsh Government and the late Carl Sargent. And I've recently been appointed as an advisor to Welsh Government to help them address some of the issues they're having in delivering affordable homes over Wales. And I remember it was on my first day when I walked into the Welsh Government offices. I was very relieved to hear that for the Welsh Government, they very much prioritise housing just behind Brexit as their top 2 priorities.
You've hit the 5-minute mark.
Just one more thing.
If you're very, very quick and you do it in about 10 seconds.
And it's
Right, if you go back to your seat now. I'll wait for you to go back to your seat, and then the officers will answer all the queries. Claire, going to start? Is he back? Not back. He's back. Right, the speaker's back to his place now. Do you want to start, Claire? Or?
Only to say, Chair, there was nothing from any of the speakers that I didn't think was already covered in the report, but if there's any specific clarification or query, then myself or Rob will be happy to answer members' queries.
Do any other officers wish to answer any of the questions asked by the speakers? Do you want to come in? Highways, come in.
Thank you, Chair. There were a number of issues raised by speakers, but I don't know if I'd want to cover them now or when members ask questions or now.
Well, you can cover them now. And if members come in, with more questions, perhaps you'll come back in. Thank you.
The three speakers raised issues, highway issues. There was Linda Joseph, Neil Beattie and Councillor Mike Villas. I'll address all the issues in one if I could, rather than address the issues to each of you. Primarily, it was about the traffic generated on Brangwyn Avenue as a consequence of this development, and how that would affect the existing traffic flows, affect the existing parking issues on Brangwyn Avenue. Also, there were issues around construction traffic to the particular site. Just to make members aware that this development is for 14 houses. If you see within the report, I did say my first comment was I am concerned about the traffic that would be generated with this development and how it would affect Brangwyn Avenue. There's a difference between being concerned and actually opposing an application from a highway standpoint. This is a very limited development of 14 houses, and the traffic generated over and above what is already in our area will not be significant. If you take it in the peak hour, for instance, it won't be a significant amount of traffic generated for this development as throughout the day, so it really won't affect the existing conditions on Brangwyn Avenue. The other issue was about construction traffic, and no doubt there will be issues if this site is ever developed and there is construction traffic to this site. But you cannot oppose an application on the basis of the construction traffic on public highway. Remember that this road and the footway network in this particular area is already existing public highway. All we can do there is manage it as best we can, and that is through a construction and management plan. With the construction vehicles is that they are to be contained within the site. So you try and manage that the best you can, and then there's a section under the Highways Act whereby we can claim for extraordinary damage, i.e. that we keep an eye on the network when the construction traffic is using it, and if there is any damage, we arrange to get that damage put right for the people that have caused it at the end of the period. So, in a nutshell, it is really, really difficult to oppose this application from a highway standpoint. And secondly, the issue of the construction traffic we would need to manage as a highway authority in conjunction with the developer. I couldn't say any more than that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any other officers who want to come in at this stage, or would you prefer? Okay. Right, we'll throw it open to members now. Two hands went up very quickly. Ron, do you want to come in first? Then Stuart, and then Janet. Right, Ron, you first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the speakers for their presentations, how eloquent and professional they all came over. And I will be going with the officer's recommendation for refusal on this. Again, to the well-being, health and well-being of the area. Something Mrs. Joseph said, that she grew up in this area and playing on these fields. So did I. I was born in Oakfield, raised in Oakfield, and I have many happy memories of this site when it used to be a play park on there. And I can remember the piece of equipment we had on there as well, long gone I know. But this has always been a recreational area for Oakfield, and as has been said, the schools have gone, Llantarnam, Oakfield Junior, both schools I went to, so I've seen a vast difference within what's happening in there. Mr Panu, he was very eloquent in stating the distances between the distance of yards to the boating lake or to the flower gardens, we call it. The flower gardens has all been called flower gardens, but not a play area as a greenery we see there. But he didn't state about Llantarnam Road, which children would have to cross. A very, very dangerous and busy road, and I would never want any of my children crossing there. I'll just reiterate what the speakers have said. I couldn't have said it any better myself, and why I will be accepting the officer's recommendation for refusal on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I don't think the officers need to answer Ron's. Thank you. Stuart, Ashley, next, please.
Thank you for everybody. The people talking, same as Ron, to be quite honest. What was interesting more is the reason officers recommend refusal. And I sat through PSB, Public Service Board, scrutiny the other day, and one thing that came out very strongly in that, under health and wellbeing, future generation, was the whole notion, which is mentioned here. We talked about planning, funnily enough, bringing that into that. And one of the other aspects in that particular scrutiny, which is pertinent to this, is the connectivity of green spaces. Now, I've noted that because no one ever come and look at this, not predetermining this, but on the basis of an area like this, which is very dense in housing. The speakers talked about the amount of green space that's left, and this could be anywhere in Torvine, not just here, but looking at this, connectivity of green spaces, and not just sort of wonderful biodiversity, but biodiversity in general. You've got the gardens, you've got the green spaces, and you've got places where people spend. Now, this rather eloquently shows that there's not a lot of it left, and how these link up, and just looking at the map, which I did before I came here, it rather shows it. And I agree with the officer's reason for refusal, because if you look at that map, those green spaces, forget the stuff over the other side of the railway line, we know that's very good quality, it's a first-class park. But look at the green spaces you've got here, the local spaces where children play, where you've got fauna and fauna, and how you link the gardens up. Connectivity. It simply and eloquently states it. I will vote against refusal, vote in favour of refusal as well.
Thank you, Stuart. Janet, next.
Hello. I visited this area with the site meeting, and I will be really agreeing with our officers. Whilst the gentleman who, the last speaker, said he was passionate about housing, I'm very passionate that our children have adequate open spaces. I felt that the site was already overdeveloped, and any more housing on there would be really lead to overcrowding. And I said I will support our officer's recommendation to object to this planning application going through.
Okay, Janet. Next on the list is Jason and then Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I, like Councillor Burnett, also attended Oakfield School, which is now gone, Llantarnam School, which is now gone. I don't want to put words in Councillor Thomas and Councillor Slade's mouth, but I have a feeling that the community feels beaten with the overdevelopment of the area. And as someone who has used that field myself, growing up, playing various sports, I think it would be a travesty to see it go. We have a duty as a council to make sure that the children of the area have somewhere to go, and with the loss of this space, that recreational area certainly would disappear to perhaps the boating lake as their nearest affordable space. So again, I support the officer's recommendations. I would like to thank Bronavon for identifying the need for additional social housing. But from my point of view, this site isn't the right one, and I would think that we want to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Steve, I got you next.
Right. As somebody said, the applicant was passionate about the housing, but the ward councillors in the community are passionate about their community. We know we need social housing, but I don't think this is the right place to have it.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone else who wants to ask a question or comment? No? Yeah, Jason? Okay.
Sorry, one more question. The figures that were presented by Mr. Pennell, I would like to know whether that was that specific to Oakfield itself, or did that relate to the wider Llantarnam Southville ward? Because there's obviously quite a large area, and we're obviously focused on Oakfield.
Right. Rob, is this your question?
Yes, the figures presented are for the Llantarnam ward, which is given. So the overall assessment has been based on that particular area. And so the figures given, are, as they do differ between us and the applicant.
Sorry, Chair, last one. If the decision is that we support the officer's recommendation, and perhaps it is not my place to make this recommendation, but it does strike me as being an ideal candidate for Section 106 funding, in which we could create some kind of park or recreational area that the community could enjoy. There are other developments in the Llantarnam, Oakfield, Southville ward that I think, if Section 106 funding was available, should be diverted to maintaining this space and keeping it as a recreational area.
Right, thank you for that, Jason. Did you want to come back in, Stuart?
I should move the recommendation.
Right, yes.
But I will take, I think, it's not that. But that's up to officers to...
Yes, yes, yeah, not for now.
So could I move, if nobody else is asking any more questions, could I move the recommendation for me, please?
I'll second that.
Does anybody want to speak before we go into a vote? It's been recommended to accept the officer's recommendation of refusal, and it's been seconded. Right, you're ready to vote? Okay, then we'll vote on that. Right, thank you. That looks unanimous to me. So that planning application has been refused. Right, we'll go to... we'll get Councillor Slade back in before we go on to the next agenda item. Is that six? Okay. Right. Okay, we got Councillor Slade back, so we'll go on to agenda item 6, which is planning application 17P0635, and the proposal for personal permission for shed for mobility scooter, and the address is at 5 Smallbrook Close, Cwmbran. And I think, Scott, you are going to give a small presentation of this. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This is a retrospective householder application which seeks to authorise the siting of a shed at the front of a property to provide secure storage for a mobility scooter. The measurements of the shed are 1.5 metres in width, 2.4 metres in length, and at its highest 2.2 metres in height. Ordinarily, given the position, an application would likely be refused. However, personal circumstance is considered to represent a material planning consideration in this instance, as it allows the applicant to remain living independently. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval, subject to it being a personal permission.
Thank you. Any questions now for Scott? Comments about it? None at all? Yes, Ron?
Just comment, Chair. As Scott said, any other circumstance, it wouldn't because of street scenes, and it's in front of, but to live independently, I mean, we can't really say no, can we? I mean, I wouldn't want to say no to it at all, but I can see if anybody did complain neighbour-wise because of the situation of it.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else want to comment? Jason?
I should have said something earlier. I actually know the agent of this scheme personally. I don't know why he did it. I asked that question the other day. Am I okay staying here on that basis?
I'll ask Polly for advice on that.
I just realised that you might have.
So can you explain that?
The agent for this scheme is somebody I personally know. No. Ask him.
Yeah. Okay then. Jason, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just to ask, what are the neighbours' views? Were there objections at the site?
The neighbour that's most impacted by this, the one on the left-hand side, they've given support to the application. Don't believe we received any representation from the other side.
Anybody else like to come in? If there are no questions or comments, would somebody like to make a proposal? Right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Right, you ready to vote? Okay then, it's been moved to approve this. Right? That's unanimous again. So this application has been approved. Right, that concludes our planning meeting for this month. Thank you all for your attendance. Thank the members and the officers. And we'll close the meeting.